So I'm Elijah. Max, thank you for having me. It's great to be back at this meeting. I used to come to this meeting pretty regularly in my second year.
Can you speak up a little?
This is about as loud as I can go. So I asked him before the meeting, I'm like, is there a microphone? Because I just don't have that here. You know, it's hard for me to project while not engaging my ego. It's a part of my ACAism, you know, like it's an interesting thing. I like to hide, you know, I like to avoid conflict. As a result of growing up in an alcoholic home, I have a lot of character traits that are coping mechanisms from the past that when they're engaged, put me right back in the position that I was in when I was a kid. And so overcoming that takes lots of work. I was reading some Alanon history. I really am a nerd for this stuff. And so I was reading about, Alanon was created by Lois and Anne, I believe, in like 1951, I think. And they were the wives of the first alcoholics, right? They were creating something to help themselves because now that the alcoholics were doing what they were doing, they were resentful and frustrated. You know, there were these feelings that were coming up. And so it was really developed for somebody dealing with alcoholism or alcoholics in their present day experience. And then, you know, I was reading about the beginnings of ACA in Alanon, and it happened in the kind of the middle, early 80s. And didn't really get, you know, World Service didn't really talk about it or address it until like 1984, 85, 86. So it's a very new element as far as, you know, how Alanon has grown to embrace this experience. But I believe that this experience is very different than the straight Alanon experience. And that's been borne out through my journey in this recovery process. I come from a lot of dysfunction and alcoholism. You know, my grandfather was a rageaholic and basically crushed the entire family through that. You know, like it just destroyed the children. You know, one of them's actually insane. My mom may or may not, her drinking definitely bothers me. She has never self-identified, and so, you know, it's none of my business. But my father has identified as an alcoholic. Although strangely, and it talks about it in the literature, and it was talking about it in what I was reading last night, often it's the non-alcoholic parent that causes me the most distress. Like, I have more resentment toward the, like, Alanon than I do toward the alcoholic. Like, in my family, my dad was the one that I could kind of rely on because my mom was going to lose her mind, like, often. Because of her father's, you know, the rage and all of that stuff, her own fuse was pretty low. So she would have these, you know, moments, and I was like, Dad, alcoholic dad, help, you know, like, so it's very complicated as far as, you know, my tendency to want to affix blame to somebody. I blame all of it. It's not the alcoholic's fault. It's not the Alanon's fault. Like, it's the family disease's fault. It's the whole thing. And if you don't have alcoholic parents, if you're in this room, I almost guarantee that you have alcoholic grandparents. I almost guarantee it. Like 99.9% of people that have these traits, this ACA sickness, it can jump generations. You know, it often goes Alanon, alcoholic, Alanon, alcoholic. So cunning and baffling and powerful this disease is. And I really think that, and this is, you know, take what you like and leave the rest. This is all, of course, my opinion, but the only difference between an alcoholic and an Alanon is the drinking. It's literally the only difference is the alcohol itself. Everything else, all the behavioral insanity is basically the same, you know. the desire to control and manage. At the end of the day, that's what I want, as a person who's grown up in the disease, is I want to try to fix the thing so that I can be comfortable. I want to control how this outcome goes so that I can be comfortable. It's all to soothe the discord that's in my spirit, this spiritual malady. And what I believe that is I created an unhealthy attachment and dependence to these people, because I did have to believe them. I had to trust them. I had to some degree, I had to ignore the bright red lights in my mind that were going, this is not true. These are lies. I had to be like, oh, the sky's red. Okay, yeah, the sky's red. Yeah, okay. Your father's passed out. He's just napping. Like all these lies, constantly lies. So I had to override that. And in doing so, my perception of reality is skewed. I don't see things quite for how they actually are. I love Alanon. Like, this program is incredible. And it's for the new people, welcome. It's somewhat vague. I have people that are new to Alanon all the time ask me, like, what is it? What are we doing? Because it does not have bless the alcoholics, because they're like, that's my problem. Don't do that. And everything's going to be fine. I don't have that. My version of that is like literally all of you. It's like, don't mess with them. Don't talk to them about your, psychotic break from reality. Like, keep the focus on yourself. Try to just talk to God and work on it's a wild process. And just to speak again on the differentiation, because I do believe that there's a differentiation. If I'm dealing with alcoholism in somebody in my current experience, it's different than if I grow up with the disease, because all of my, all of those coping mechanisms that I've created and implemented that are based on lies are the things that I carry with me into adulthood that make my adult life impossible. Not challenging, but impossible. Because they are remnants from a way of being that can no longer serve me whatsoever. So to divest myself of those things, I need more intensive work. And I just share this because I think that it's relevant for some people. And for some people, Alanon is plenty. 2 minutes? Awesome, thank you. And for those people, God bless, keep doing what you're doing. In the early 80s, actually in the late 70s, in New York, an Alateen sponsor named Tony A. started working with some people who had finished Alateen, but they were still finding problems in their adult lives. And through working with that group and other groups subsequently, an entire program was created called Adult Children of Alcoholics. Most Alanons have no idea that it exists. It's a separate program. It has a book of its own that's like 600 pages. So, it comes directly out of Alateen. It is to me, it is part of this program, but there's very little interaction between the two programs. And I find that that's a problem, especially because the message and the recovery that is necessary is largely in that book. It's a much deeper thing. I need more tools and more help, and I need outside help, because just keeping the focus on myself, using the Alanon tools, it does help me, but it doesn't get to those things that are deep underneath it. What it does do, and what I'm so grateful for, is that it helps me create an adult self. It helps me create an adult, which I need to actually do the work of the reparenting and the rescuing of that innermost self that's deeply wounded and needs to grieve. And I need the Alanon adult self to create a safe container so that part can come out. Because if I don't do that, if I don't grow and learn how to be okay in the moment with people and have, work a job and like do basic things, if I don't have that adult mind, that part of me will never come out. And it will always cause me distress, and it will always cause me pain, and it will always cause me despair. And my relationships won't function properly. So I'm so grateful for the tools that I've gotten through the years that I've been here, and thank you so much for letting me share. So I'm Elijah. Yeah, I mean, I love all of the stories from survival to recovery. The thing that I think I relate the most to is I denied, I argued, I refused, I said yes, but. I ran away, I cried, I ranted and raved, I ignored. Like, whatever it took for many years to pretend that it wasn't as bad as it was. That was one of the main coping mechanisms that I employed. And that denial is, like it says later in this passage, it is still one of those things that I need to be, I have to be vigilant about it because it will return. It says, often I have to reread something and have seen it an entirely, I scratch my head and wonder where those words were the last time I read it. So my mind is always changing. And, the alcoholic thinking that I absorbed is always trying to confuse me and get me back into denial and separate me from my fellows. Like, it's very consistent in its attempts to do what it's doing. And so, that denial layer is really something that I have to work on a day at a time. In this recovery process. And I feel exactly the same way that this person feels, I get emotional when I think about what this program has done for my life. Like, my internal experience of being alive is dramatically different. It is dramatically different. On the outside, it does not look that different. But I don't want to die every day when I wake up anymore. I used to want to die every day when I woke up, and I was like, why do I want to die every day? I don't know. It's so weird. And it was just the accumulation of the effects of alcoholism. And my mind absorbed it and then fed it back to me. And so I've learned in this program through prayer and meditation, through the inventory process, because I have to know what's actually in my mind before I can empty it, right? And then I do prayer and meditation to try to be in the moment, because being in the moment is where my disease can't really get me. If I'm in the past, it's got me. If I'm in the future, it's got me. But right here, I can be with a higher power. And it kind of protects me, it keeps me safe, like somebody else mentioned. Is that?
You have 15 seconds.
15 seconds. Okay, that's enough out of me. Thank you for letting me share again.